The United States of America is the most powerful empire that has ever existed in human history. Without even being the absolute largest in terms of overall territory.
I don't think that's true.
No other empire has ever been as capable of so thoroughly enforcing its will across the rest of the planet. Economically, the United States...
Bro, we can't even get OPEC to not cut fucking production. Fucking Biden went over there and begged, dude. We can't, they fucking cut production right now. I will say, it's rare in human history that there's been a vehicle of power as strong as the US dollar. The more research I've done, the more incredibly powerful the dollar as the global reserve currency in the most globalized economy ever is. It's insanely powerful. Like right now, currently with the strong dollar, all of the many mistakes we've made with printing money, we're still having problems with inflation. But we're like exporting our inflation globally. Everybody else is getting fucked for problems that we had. And it's like, we are going to have probably the least bad of all the inflationary damages of almost every other country, despite being one of the biggest offenders because of this. The US dollar is crazy. Its ability to sanction, its ability to allow our government to run huge deficits. It's an insane superpower. And it's very hard for the rest of the world to get off of it. Like the first person to get off of it is fucked, but you need a bunch to do it to create like a actual tide change. But no one wants to be the first, even though everybody knows that like they should get off of it. It's like a crack that everyone's hooked on more than anything else, more than like military. Honestly, I think the military stuff's overestimated. We spend a lot of money on the military, yeah, but a huge part of that is that like our costs are also massively inflated. I saw a chart that showed military spending based on purchasing power parity, which is like a more accurate. And it's like a lot of the countries you see that have like 1/10 of our spending are actually closer to 2/3 because they have much cheaper troop costs, like the cost of like keeping someone in the army. And then, you know, we have tons of extremely like just bloated military spending on contractors. So yeah, we definitely have the strongest military, but the lead is not nearly as insurmountable as it seems. And a lot of it is wasteful. A lot of it.
States has continuously remained the world's largest economy since the 1890s, and is the only country that has ended every single decade with a larger economy than it started with for the past 150 years.
Undefeated,
the US dollar is the primary reserve currency used by most of the world's nations.
Yeah.
America's government is the second longest continuously run regime in the world. And despite making up just 5% of the contemporary human population, the United States controls around 30% of the entire planet's wealth and produces 20% of all global manufacturing. And complementing America's tremendous...
Okay, but you know, like those numbers sound nice, but they're way lower than they used to be. You know what I'm saying? Both those numbers are on a downtrend. And in fact, like manufacturing, China's like 80%. You know, like it says, whoa, they have 5% of the population and 20% of the manufacturing, but China has like significantly more. I'm not disputing all the facts in this video. I just think it's worth noting that like when people think it's unassailable or they think like it's really not.
Tremendous economic might is also her unprecedented military strength. The U.S. military...
China only has more for 34 days. Yeah, I mean, China will collapse any day now, for sure.
Military alone represents nearly 40% of all worldwide military spending. The U.S. Navy represents half of the worldwide naval fleet. The United States controls more than 750 overseas military bases across every conceivable theater of the world.
And I've lived on a lot of them.
Attack any threat anywhere on the surface of the planet in less than 48 hours. And while there are many factors that contribute towards this unprecedented global power and influence of the United States, the biggest reason for it and the true source from which all American powers...
Just the thing about it is like, I think this video is more about geography. I think he's just doing intro. And I'm interested to see the geography because US does have kind of crazy OP geography. We're just long past an era where being able to project military force like that is even useful. Like soft power is just 100 times more important. We don't use most of these bases. They don't do much. The wars in Iraq have proven that like this kind of shit ends up being a quagmire anyway. And that's only if the other power doesn't have nuclear weapons, which 99%, which, you know, all the big ones do now. At which point you can't do anything with it. In a post-nuclear world, a lot of this stuff is just wasteful. You paying attention to Ukraine or what? In what way has the United States military bases done anything to help in Ukraine? The best thing we helped in Ukraine was by dumping money. Having lots of money has helped a lot in Ukraine because we've dumped weapons and money into Ukraine at a massive rate, which has given the Ukrainian army, which has a better will to fight than the Russian army, an advantage. Also, our ability to tweet and change our flags to Ukrainian profile pictures, which is sort of my contribution.
Stems is the fact that the geography and the geology of the North American continent itself is just insanely overpowered from a civilization building standpoint. In fact, it's so outrageously overpowered that it's not even really fair to any of Earth's other civilizational start points, and it was almost inevitable that any civilization—
What does Quagmire even mean? Oh, that's why you guys were all saying giggity. I thought you were saying giggity because I said soft power, and I was thinking of like a dick or something, but it's because I said Quagmire. Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
That began where the United States did, regardless of people or ideology, would have eventually emerged as the dominant global superpower. So allow me to explain in depth why that's the case. To begin with, the core geographic reason of America's global power and the core of the North American continent itself is almost certainly the Mississippi River and the vast basin that surrounds it, wedged in between the high Rocky Mountains in the west and the low—
What does Quagmire mean? It's like, it's like a slog, like just bogged down. Yeah, bogged down. Like everything is fucking slow, unable to move, messy, a swamp of quicksand. That's what it is. That's what it actually is. It basically means you can make no progress.
Mountains in the east, interconnecting with the Illinois, Ohio, Tennessee, Red, Arkansas, and Missouri rivers as well. Most of the tributary rivers that feed into this enormous system, spanning 1/3 of the entire continent, begin at relatively low elevations, which effectively means that the majority of the basin's rivers—
The more you quag, the less you're able to mire. Exactly, that's what I was trying to say. It's like living in Quahog. It's like trying to go and have a beer at the Rusty Clam, or that's what the war in Iraq was like.
And absent of any obstacles like rapids, and have therefore been easily navigable for thousands of years without the need for any advanced technology, expensive development, or infrastructure. The most important thing to understand about the Mississippi River—
I'm not going to watch this whole thing. We're going to watch up until 10:30, including pauses, so 20 minutes, and then we're going to watch Community.
Itself is that it is the longest navigable river in the world, meaning that since time immemorial, anyone could essentially sail a boat carrying—
So step one, if you are another country, rename your river to the Mississippi River, because our big advantage is that we have a river named the Mississippi River.
Supplies or people from the Gulf of Mexico into the Mississippi's mouth and up more than 3,000 kilometers deep into the North American interior before hitting the river's only natural waterfall here, which, without coincidence, is exactly where the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul was settled. The navigable section of the Mississippi River from these waterfalls down to the delta in the Gulf of Mexico is more than 3 times the length of the Rhine in Europe.
Get fucked, Rhine.
And a third longer than even the Danube.
Get
Europe's
fucked, Danube.
Longest river. Navigable rivers like the Mississippi or the Rhine are tremendously valuable to generating economic activity because they are substantially cheaper to use as transportation of goods and people than land-based infrastructure. Roads and railways require not only high initial costs to construct, but high ongoing maintenance costs to keep them functioning and running as well.
Right.
Whereas rivers are already there and are basically just free to use. The only costs involve creating
Yoink.
ports and boats to carry stuff up and down them. And as a result of that, shipping products by water as opposed to land is anywhere from 10 to 30 times less expensive in the modern 21st century era. And civilizations who have more navigable rivers will be able to retain substantially higher amounts of profits from all the capital that they'll be saving on transportation costs.
Yeah!
This fact instantly makes the Mississippi River, as the longest navigable river in the world, tremendously economically valuable to anybody who controls it.
All right, get it out the river.
Farms and factories built
Forget the river. Let me see something else. What's this?
to Baltimore, Maryland. And since the delta of the Mississippi River empties out directly into this further navigable network, it means that goods have been able to be cheaply, reliably, and quickly transported from all throughout the North
still
American
talking about it?
interior to all across the
I
Gulf
get it. It's a
and
good
East
river.
Coast now for hundreds of years. When collectively added together, the internal rivers of the Mississippi Basin and this external intracoastal waterway wrapping around the Gulf and East Coasts account for nearly 25,000 kilometers of combined navigable waterways, which is not only more than the rest of North America combined, but more than the rest of the entire planet combined.
Wow, that's actually crazy.
The end result is the greatest natural transportation system to be found anywhere in the world.
That is crazy.
An enormous network of freely available
OP.
riverine superhighways that causes 90% of the lower
It'd be funny if I skipped 20 minutes and he's still talking about the Mississippi River. And another thing about the Mississippi River is that it has 4 S's in it.
Continental 48 United States to be within just the
let's see
easternmost portion of the Midwest, located within the rain shadow cast by the towering Rocky Mountains of the continent, is dry but temperate and perfect for growing wheat like Ukraine and southern Russia, while the central portion is temperate and humid, perfect for growing corn and soybeans. Today, an area more than twice the size of France is under till within the Midwest alone. And as a result, this region produces nearly a third of the entire planet's supply of corn and soybeans.
Sheesh.
And more than $150 billion worth of agricultural produce
That's a lot of
overall
Doritos, baby.
per year. And all of this enormous agricultural land happens to also roughly overlap with the world's largest network of easily navigable rivers. It is a perfect natural recipe for an
The main thing is that the United States is food independent. Roughly, we still import a lot of energy, but roughly energy independent. We have a lot of production of our own energy. Two of those things are extremely helpful in any type of wartime situation. And then easily defendable borders and no enemies on our borders. Canada and Mexico are not enemies or, aligned with foreign enemy powers. So it's peaceful borders and there's nothing else. So those 3 things are like the big GOAT status. Canada is the enemy, not yet at least. Okay. The great US-Canadian war is coming up. They're not oil independent, no, but they are a major oil producer. So like in times of shortage or whatever, it's a much better spot to be in than like most of the country of Europe that import like all of their energy.
agricultural superpower to develop from. And when further considering the fact that the Intracoastal Waterway Network further services...
Skip. What else?
But great as it is, the Mississippi Basin does contain a couple...
Shut the fuck up about the Mississippi Basin, motherfucker. Skipping again.
Back in the 1970s, the river would have naturally shifted course away from its current path, beginning in a location that hardly anyone will have ever heard of, the small town of Vidalia, Louisiana. From here, the Mississippi would have begun flowing into...
This dude dick riding a river. Absolutely. All right, one more time for the fans. All right,
south and the north cannot support
Something else.
nearly as powerful nor as populous an empire as the land in the middle that is presently controlled by
Get
the
owned,
United
Canada.
States.
All Canadians get owned.
After the United States invaded, conquered, and annexed half of Mexico back in the 1840s, the largely mountainous lands that Mexico was left with didn't contain even a single naturally navigable river within the interior, and only a single good natural port on the coastline at Veracruz. In addition, what agricultural areas Mexico had left were relegated within the many valleys crisscrossing in between the mountains, leading them to be highly separated from all the other agricultural areas of the country, which is completely opposite of the enormously interconnected agricultural geography further to the north in the United States.
But it was a fair split.
And then in Canada, the vastness of the Canadian Shield, a cold region where glaciation over eons of time has stripped the area of most of its usable soil, making it useless for agriculture, stretches
Canada's playing the long game, dude. Every Canadian out there with a fucking aerosol can, just waiting for the world to warm up. This starts to fucking melt. Uh-oh. All this breadbasket moves up. slowly moves up. Everything down there gets too hot, moves up. But what you don't know is so do our tanks. This is going to be New Kansas, buddy. This is New Kansas in 2034.
Across half the entire country between the Great Lakes and the Arctic Ocean, and separates the small, agriculturally productive core of Canadian
Ohio
civilization
too.
around Toronto and Montreal, from the
North
Prairie
Texas.
Provinces and British Columbia over to the west. Without any internally navigable
We're going to do one, because I'll be president by then, obviously. Obviously, you guys will have elected me president of the United States by then. And I assume it's a random drawing every day of the 12 Canadians that are fucking care about it. A Spectacore will be president by then as well. And we're going to do one fucking hitman horse for all of this. We're doing one hitman horse for all territory. Get ready, baby.
rivers between them to rely upon, like much of the United States, there is still, to this day, only a single
We're going to end up with Sweden controlling both of them. Linkus, surprise, fucking...
road that connects all four of these provinces west of the Canadian Shield to the core of Canadian civilization to the east of the Shield. And this means that, inevitably, the four Canadian provinces west of the Shield are significantly more economically integrated with the United States to the south than with the rest of Canada to the east. Because it's far easier to actually travel south and access America's vastly superior transportation network. Therefore, as the fate of geography would have it,
He's saying that we have a lot of good stuff, but that just vastly superior to Canadian transport is like a fucking wagon, dude. You know what I'm saying? They're still riding moose around, and you cross this border, and all of a sudden, like, we've got the wheel. It's not fucking hard to do. The bar is low.
the core region of North
Yes,
America's
give me more river stuff.
insane productivity and easy transportation is also one of the most secure locations of its kind anywhere on the planet, far removed from any potential major rivals or threats. And this, in essence, is the secret sauce of America's enormous geopolitical strength. Incredibly easy transportation within the
Also, this video is like, you know, if you're like America, hoorah, it's kind of a feels good, right? It's like, oh, wow, this is good. All this stuff is good. But it's more of a feels bad that we're fucking up the easy mode. It's like, we got it. We got all these advantages and we're fucking it up big. There's some downsides, to be sure.
Combined with incredibly
How do you
difficult
fuck up the
transportation
Mississippi
beyond
River?
it. Not only can no rivals easily develop within North America to threaten the core, but two enormous oceans separate the core from all other continents as well,
Yeah, that's a big one.
essentially transforming the United States into an island empire, but of continental scale. Oceans are incredible.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I mean, the reason Britain was so strong, same way. Britain being on an island, massive fucking advantage for most of recorded history. But now they're kind of too small to get the job done. And so America just gets the British advantage, but with the bigger scale.
Incredibly difficult for invading militaries to travel across. In 1940, with the domination of continental Europe, Adolf Hitler had to cancel the invasion of England across the English Channel because it was proving too logistically difficult for the Nazi war machine to pull off. And that channel
The UK is saved from invasion by a stronger power like 600 fucking times across this fucking channel. It's insane. And Japan. Same with Japan. Japan and the UK both survive as nations against all odds many, many times because crossing a river or a small body of water is hard.
is only 33 kilometers wide at the narrowest point. The shortest distance between the United States and Europe is nearly 5,000 kilometers across the open ocean.
Crazy, we still almost lost to Britain. Twice. Basically did in 1812. They're fucking shipping troops in 5,000 kilometers away and we are still like...
And it's even
lucky.
further away from
That's
Asia
lucky.
across the vast and empty Pacific. So, as a result, the core of the United States has never been invaded by a hostile foreign power in more than 2 centuries since the British in 1815, because it's largely impossible to actually do so. Especially when considering that the United States also controls half of the naval tonnage of all the world's navies and dominates
Tom
the
Cruise?
entirety of the world's oceans. And even
Can you imagine trying to fight America if we sent out Tom Cruise in an F-16? You just couldn't. We'll blast highway to the danger zone.
If somehow a foreign power was capable of miraculously overcoming the largest, most capable, and most technologically advanced navy in human history, and then transporting and supplying hundreds of thousands to millions of troops across thousands of kilometers of open ocean and landing them on the beaches of North America, it still wouldn't even really matter, because the North American continent has essentially all of the resources required for modern civilization and modern militaries located deep within it.
Yeah.
This is the other huge key to the power of...
I think I summarized everything this video said in like 15 seconds, and this guy did 40 minutes. I feel like I got it across. He's just saying things I said, but he's taking a fucking long ass time.
Raw geologic potential. For many decades, the specter of overdependence on other nations and other continents for their energy resources towered over the minds of America's most strategic planners. Though it was once...
I mean, this is what Europe's big problem is right now, though. A lack of energy independence, or even close to it. Energy is like the lifeblood, it's the fuel of not just like modern empires, but all empires. It's incredibly important. And it's Europe's biggest weakness right now, and it's causing the biggest amount of strife. Good thing they shut off those nuclear reactors. Yeah, that was a big dumb idea. That was a big dumb goofy. Energy independence is like incredibly important. You can't even be economically independent without it. Should have gone solar or wind like 50 years ago. Well, they have. They're kind of leading in it. The problem is they also, they shut down natural gas plants and nuclear plants, and there's just no way for wind and solar to fill that gap quickly enough or at the scale. They should have kept going on renewables, but without decommissioning all the natural gas stuff, because now they can't even... Like now with Russia's pipeline turned off, and they're getting... Even if they get new shipments of natural gas from other ports, like you need a certain type of, I don't know, liquefier or whatever, or deliquefier, whatever it is. The natural gas gets shipped in tankers, and you have to find a way to fucking turn it back into gas, and it requires a special plant, and they don't have any of those built. They decommissioned them all. Yeah, processing plant. Not having those means they can't even buy it. Like, they can't even buy the natural gas they need, so they're just fucked. France has nuclear, but no one else. Yeah, and not enough still. I think they shut down some. Nuclear can be dangerous, though. Imagine a big nuclear spill. You typing that in all caps is funny, because... Yeah, I mean, it can be dangerous, but it can also be safe and extremely efficient. Nuclear is pretty goated if you look at the numbers. Bro, in Civ 6, I build so many nuclear plants, it's so OP. You should run the country.
It's the largest producer and exporter of oil in the world throughout the early 20th century, and provided nearly 6 out of 7 of all the...
Unlike gas and oil, which are perfectly risk-free and, of course, never harm the earth. I think you're talking to the nuclear guy, but also, like, yes, it is 100% true that, like, we do have to find a way off of gas and oil, but the way they did it was probably a little too hasty. Yeah, okay, I mean, it is just proven to be a little too hasty. And collapsing your energy independence and putting your economy at risk and putting your citizens at risk is probably not worth, rushing it.
Barrels of oil used by the
it seemed like a
Allies
mistake
of
in
World
hindsight.
War II. America's days as a major oil-producing nation were believed to be ending by the mid-1970s, as demand rapidly outpaced production in the post-World War II boom economy. By 1973, with the country importing more than a...
Good old clean coal is obviously the way. Yeah. Clean coal. Hell yeah, brother. I think we should get rid of nuclear, wind, solar, hydro, and just get back to good old clean ass coal, dude. It'll never go away. It burns clean. Clean coal was good marketing. There's nothing clean about coal, brother.
Third of its entire oil supply from abroad, the United States was suddenly especially vulnerable to international oil embargoes coming from OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, consisting of countries across the Middle East, Africa, and Venezuela. At that time, the countries of OPEC represented half of all the oil production in the world, and their decision to embargo the United States due to their support of Israel during the Yom Kippur War shut them out from that half of the world's supply, and caused American energy prices to skyrocket. Later on, after the 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran, the United States became shut out from that country's entire rich supply of oil as well. And as the demand for oil within the United States continued to increase throughout the 20th century, and with domestic production never capable of catching up, America found itself in a position where, by 2005, the country was importing a whopping 60% of its oil supply from abroad. an amount that is, percentage-wise, highly similar to what China imports today. As a consequence, American foreign policy was, for decades in the later 20th century, dominated and constrained by this heavy dependence on the outside world for its oil supplies. But, beginning in the early 21st century, a revolution in the oil and gas industry back at home
Fracking!
permanently changed this reality with profound and still unknown consequences. Technological and economic innovations in drilling technology and techniques now known as fracking were finally unlocking the
Bro, it's not even pre-watch. I just know this shit. I mean, it's nice to have. Again, to be energy independent is nice for your country, but there are definitely ecological consequences. Nuclear would be sick. I'm very pro-nuclear. It's like by far the most efficient, and you can handle. It's just a lot of fear campaign. All right, is it time for community? 10:30. All right, it's community time. Giga Chad, my grandkids' problem. You're a Zoomer, right? It's gonna be your problem, bro. It's not gonna go that long. The real thing, though, again, United States, good on food independence, energy independence. The real scary thing as we move into a more multipolar world around the US and China is that, like, the massive amount of rare earth minerals that are used to make most of the chips and silicon and high-tech shit that we use today is like all in China. It's all controlled by China, or it's in Africa under Chinese control. All that stuff is extremely out of the reach of the US supply chain currently. It's all of it's imported, or like 80% of the supply chain is controlled by China. And so that's like the biggest risk. Not oil or food. And it's not like it's only one way. There's many things that China depends on the outside world for as well. I think Chinese geography is worse. They're more vulnerable to climate change. They have their own demographic problems. A lot of things. Every country is dependent on other countries. And it's not a good thing that we're going to end up in a more split world. And we had a pretty good thing going where everybody was working together. Except for Australia, Giga Chads. Yeah, Australia is the most perfect country. No flaws, and definitely no major economic dependence on China that is causing them a lot of political and internal instability right now, because they don't necessarily agree with China, but also can't afford to piss them off too much because almost all of their exports go through China and imports. That is true. You're totally right. But what would happen if China stopped exporting all of a sudden? It would be terrible for all parties, including China, dramatically. China's got a very export-based economy. They would have nothing. They don't have internal consumption. It would destroy China. It would actually collapse, but also it would hurt everybody else.